LIV Golf's had a pretty successful inaugural season, as it managed to establish itself as one of the big players in the mainstream golfing scene. But while Greg Norman and his team have already pulled off some incredible stuff, a new report reveals that they were initially aiming for even crazier stuff. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Saudi League's lofty ambitions and Norman's huge win, so keep watching. First off, LIV Golf wanted an all-star board to head its league. 2022 has arguably been one of the craziest years in golf history, and the majority of the credit, or blame, goes to the Saudi-funded breakaway league. Of course, their main purpose was to be the big disruptors in the sport, ending the PGA Tour's quote-unquote monopoly over the game and bringing some real competition into the fray. And even though they've had to face many hurdles, including player bans and whatnot, we'd say they've been more than successful in achieving most of their goals. Well, that's what we've been led to believe all this time from the circuit's management, as everyone from Greg Norman to the players has nothing but good things to say about it. The reality, however, might actually be a bit different. You see, when LIV Golf entered headfirst into the golfing landscape and started handing out $200 million contracts to sign stars like Phil Mickelson and Cameron Smith, everyone called them. Little did they know, however, that there was an even plan brewing underneath this mask. Yep, a new report from the New York Times has revealed that the controversial project actually considered assembling an all-star team for its board, including names like Michael Jordan and Condoleezza Rice. Oh, and the report isn't just limited to these names either. In fact, it also mentions all the players that LIV Golf was targeting on top of their internal barometers for success. So there's a lot to dig into here. Up next, what LIV's all-star board could have looked like. Now you might be wondering how we even know about all these details about LIV Golf. After all, this stuff isn't generally revealed to the public. Well, turns out there's a rat in the ranks in the circuits, as they've leaked confidential documents from the consultancy firm McKinsey & Company. Called Project Wedge, this new plan was apparently meant to take the breakaway league to the next level. But before we dissect this whole thing, we've got to keep one thing in mind. These records don't reflect the current circumstances. Instead, they were drawn when the league had yet to tee off its first season, so a lot has changed since then. With that out of the way, let's talk about this quote-unquote all-star board. Why would a golfing league that's trying to compete with the PGA Tour want someone like Michael Jordan on board? It's simple really, you see. Not only does Jordan love golf, a fact that's pretty evident from his 1.3 handicap, but he's also a very smart businessman. After all, you don't build a shoe empire like that for no reason. Oh, and then there's his knowledge of the NBA model, which Norman's trying to mimic for the second season of his league. So it works perfectly on top of having that X factor of a massive star like him. What's more, the other names are also in similar camps, with Condoleezza Rice taking on a more political role and people like Mark Parker tending to the business side of things. Not to mention the breakaway league's three-pronged approach. Of course, these weren't the only names on the list. As a matter of fact, the potential board for LIV could have had some massively popular top executives as well, like Jeannie Rometty, who's the former chief executive of IBM, and Randall Stevenson, a former AT&T chairman who's now working for the PGA Tour. So that would have been a slam dunk for Norman as well. You've got to wonder though, why did the upstart circuit even need all these names? Doesn't this sound a bit too disjointed? You've got businessmen, NBA legends, and a politician. Well, this was all part of the league's three-pronged approach, where they'd essentially divide the jobs into business, sports, and legal or political. So if there was some lobbying to be done, or you had to discuss a lawsuit, you'd send out the political people. Jordan would have been the perfect fit for pure star power and the sporting side. Plus, there aren't many people who are better at growing a business than Parker or Rometty. Like, this was supposed to be a total lockdown on all aspects of the game, making LIV Golf a bulletproof entity. But of course, these plans never really materialized. As a matter of fact, when New York Times reached out to these people, the majority of them said they've never even been contacted by the league. Stevenson, for instance, said he didn't know he was on the list, though he did say that even if he was approached, his answer would be a simple no, and he didn't have any interest in jumping ship. What's more, LIV tried to sign the top 12 players in the world. Board members weren't the only thing that LIV Golf was trying to nab, they were also looking to sign more players. Now, of course, this isn't a massive surprise, since Norman's essentially approached every top golfer to sign for his circuit. Not to mention, he's also said countless times how he's trying to sign more players as he heads into the next season. That said, there was one pretty fascinating detail about these players in the report. Apparently, the Saudi-founded tour was basing its success on signing these stars. Yep, you heard that right. Getting all these players and board members were meant to be benchmarks for the league, which, if you look at it from that angle, sort of failed miserably. Another interesting thing about the leaked documents is that they don't really mention what these top players are based on. Like, they certainly aren't based on any world golf rankings, cause then golfers like Mickelson wouldn't be in the fray. That said, we've got all the usual expected names here, including Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. Oh, and just in case you're curious, they only managed to sign 4 out of 12 of these golfers. Not to mention, we don't think players like Woods and McIlroy, firmly ingrained within their tour structure, are ever going to switch sides even if LIV Golf offered them $1 billion. Speaking of $1 billion, Norman actually did sort of confirm earlier this year that they offered Woods an amount close to that, which he declined. So there's that. Coming up, the leak also listed potential future outcomes for LIV. Alright, let's talk about these quote-unquote benchmarks. So basically, the leaked documents also reveal the potential outcomes if the league manages to meet or miss these targets. And these are divided into 3 categories: LIV completely failing as a startup, coexisting with the tour, and last but not least, completely dominating the sport. Fairly obvious, yeah, but here's the interesting bit. They also go into detail about the financial side of things and how that would pan out in all 3 of these situations. The doomsday scenario, for instance, presents a pretty bad outlook for the circuit, as it essentially follows the good old rule of whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So you've got those top players and executives turning down Norman's advances, which would lead to the audience not having much interest in the league because they won't have the top players. This will then feed into the sponsors backing out, as no one would be watching the league, resulting in a total disaster. In fact, the situation would be so bad that by 2028, they'd be losing around $355 million per year. Yeah, not making a profit after 6 years probably isn't the move. Admittedly, the scenario probably exaggerates a lot of these things, cause we're sure it's never going to be that dramatic. At the same time, however, you've got to remember if LIV had failed to sign some big stars like Mickelson, Smith, and Johnson, then maybe it would have imploded after its first season. Following up, LIV Golf is in a healthy spot right now. Now let's talk about the more positive outlook. Essentially, if the league manages to sign these top players and executives by 2028, they're gonna be swimming in cash, as their estimated yearly revenue would be $1.4 billion. And at that point, you're basically printing money. Not to mention, all that pressure of delivering a return on the Saudi investment would also be relieved from Norman's shoulders. Then again, this scenario assumes that the PGA Tour would be nowhere to be seen, which is never gonna happen in a million years. So perhaps the middle ground, where both the Tour and LIV coexist, is the way to go for everyone involved. Besides, we're sure there's ample room for golf to grow as a sport, with both of them remaining in the market, cause they're not even targeting the same audience. Sure, they're both playing the same sport and have some overlap happening between the players at majors, but other than that, the business and sporting models are totally different. That's why, even if some of these benchmarks and the results seem bleak on paper, LIV has made some really good and steady progress over the past year, and honestly, we don't see how they fail from here. Now for Greg Norman's huge win. Whether you like him or not, you can't argue against the fact that the Australian golfing legend has single-handedly destroyed the current status quo and is one of the main reasons behind LIV Golf's success. And of course, he's usually surrounded by controversy too, as the media continues to take shots at him for his comments. That said, Norman's finally got a win, as he's been named in Sports Business Journal's most influential dealmakers and disruptors list. Now, we don't know about you, but that's a fitting title for someone like Greg. Oh, and he's in some pretty good company too, with powerhouses like Serena Williams, LeBron James, and Todd Boehly making the list as well. Though interestingly, right above the Aussie's name is Yasir Al-Rumayyan, who's the governor of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, currently funding the breakaway league setup. So maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. What do you think though? Does Greg Norman deserve to be on this list of disruptors? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.